Good morning, Wednesday, January 29th, on a snowy morning in Vermont. We are going to meet with Honora Horton, Executive Director of Hunger Free Vermont. Good morning, how are you?
Good morning. I am well, Chair Ingalls. Thank you, and thank you, members of the committee, for having me in this morning. And I submitted slides as my testimony, and if that's all right with everyone, I will share my screen now for the benefit of the live stream, if nothing else. So my purpose here today is to give this committee, which has new members on it, but also some old hands. So apologies, Senator Collmore, in advance.
I don't mind being called an old hand at all.
No, I mean,
it's the old part that bothers me a little bit.
I mean that you have heard much of some of this before. But my purpose here is to provide an overview of Hunger Free Vermont and what we do and what kinds of services we and support we can offer to you all as this committee might be carrying forward your work, and also just some a reminder of the many successful initiatives for food security that the agriculture committees have advanced and supported over the last decade of time, and also a bit of an introduction to Three Squares Vermont, which is Vermont's SNAP program, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, a really critical food security program for many thousands of people in our state. And of course, please feel free to just interrupt me with questions at any time. I was a college professor for many years, and interruptions do not faze me.
We appreciate that. We were able, be careful with that. We're able to get you off your game.
That's okay. Okay, well, that's all right. I want to be useful to you in our conversation today. So Hunger Free Vermont's mission is to end the injustice of hunger for everyone in Vermont. And we prioritize the people who are most affected by hunger in our work to make permanent systemic change. And what we envision is a vibrant, community-centered future for our state where every one of us has the nourishing food we need and want. And we really believe that that's possible, and also that we've made great strides in that direction as a state, and there are additional actions that we can take toward that future. Hunger Free Vermont has been around we are in our 32nd year, and right, that's the slide I want. And we are the statewide organization in Vermont that is dedicated to expanding equitable access to all the federal nutrition programs for everyone who needs them. And there are many federal nutrition programs, and this is a list of the most kind of salient of them for our work. So these are all programs that are, the benefits are funded, either most or all of the benefits, Meals on Wheels would be the exception there, are funded by federal dollars. They're administered by state agencies and here in Vermont. And if you put them all together, they make a profound, profound difference in creating stable food security for families and individuals in Vermont. And I feel like I need to pause here to acknowledge. Oh yes, sorry, Senator Major.
I think you're going to say what I was going to ask, so I'll let you finish your thought.
Okay. Well, let's see. I think I was going to say I need to pause here to acknowledge the announcement from the federal government, from the federal administration yesterday, that froze funding in a very unclear way for a pretty unclear set of programs that And not only for the benefits themselves, but the funding to potentially state agencies and also to nonprofits that make those programs run. And there is a federal judge has put a pause on the implementation of that order. The scope of the order has been changed multiple times by the Trump administration in the last 24, 48 hours. But I think it's just important to acknowledge that these programs are critical. And there may come a time during this legislative session where it will be important for the members of this committee and this legislative body to raise your voices as stewards of our state up to the federal level about the need to preserve and support and even expand these programs in the face of so many people being unable to afford to meet all of their basic needs here in Vermont and nationally. Did that answer your question sufficiently, Senator Major? Or do you
Absolutely.
have some follow-up? Okay, thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
I appreciate all of you paying attention to that situation on the federal level because it's very, very concerning, indeed frightening for the people who are struggling to afford to take care of themselves and their families in our state. So Hunger Free Vermont provides customized free technical assistance and training. So we help schools, community service organizations, childcare providers, area agencies on aging, community action agencies, many different, hundreds of different direct service organizations around the state, reach people and assist people in applying for benefits like Three Squares Vermont, in developing and improving their school meal programs, in setting up and running free summer and after school meal programs, just as some examples. And we also engage in public education and outreach. So it's great if these programs exist, but if people don't know that they're there, people don't know how to access them, people don't know that how they can get help applying, then those programs don't do very much good for our Vermont communities. And this is a place where you all having some knowledge about these programs and their availability can be really valuable as well. You're out, you're speaking to constituents, you're at community events in your districts, and it is great when a trusted public figure speaks highly of these programs and their benefits and encourages people to apply. And we have materials if you ever want to bring any with you, or in additional information for constituents available to you. That's one of the services we provide. We build coalitions and bring people together in communities around the state. We have 10 hunger councils regionally, and we bring people together to talk about the hunger issues that they're experiencing in their own region and help network and connect people and give them resources to take action on those. We also, obviously, as I'm here today, we engage in governmental advocacy for both administrative and legislative change to make these programs work better for everybody in Vermont. And we also, in recent years, although this was not in our original mission, have been engaged in emergency food response coordination support with the state around the flooding disasters in the last couple of years. And before that, the COVID-19 pandemic, where our Hunger Council served as the networking spaces to set up and make sure those food distribution sites could operate with the food boxes, and in other ways we have been working closely with other organizations and state agencies and the SEOC since the COVID-19 pandemic began.
Yes. So thank you, Mr. Chair. Yesterday we had, I thought, great testimony from John Ramsey from the Center for Agricultural Economy. What engagement do you have with his group?
So we certainly consider the Center for an Agricultural Economy a really important partner. You know, part of our work always has been to think about what we really have to do as a state to create true food security. And a lot of that is making sure we have a food supply for the people here in our state.
Sure.
So we have always partnered with the Vermont Farm to School Network, with the food aggregators like the Center for an Agricultural Economy and other food hubs around the state. You know, our whole vision, for example, for how we in coalition with many of those organizations designed Vermont's Universal School Meals Act and the local food purchasing incentive that went along with it, was to make sure that schools, which run the largest food service enterprises in every town and city in our state, if you stop and think about it for a minute, could leverage that buying power to buy local food and use local food in schools, and summer meal programs and after school meal programs and childcare programs. So that's really critical, and part also of which you've I think had a presentation on the Vermont Food Security Roadmap to 2035, and that's the whole vision of the roadmap, is to integrate making sure Vermont farms are resilient in the face of dramatically accelerating climate change, and that they have markets that we're fostering for Vermont products, and that everybody in Vermont, including especially people who are at risk of hunger, can actually be food secure and can access and have Vermont farm products nourish them and improve their health and well-being.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. So just really quickly, most of Hunger Free Vermont's funding we raise from private charitable foundations and individual donors and businesses. 13% of our funding is government grants. Most of those are federal, almost all, except a tiny bit that come through state agencies. And I'll just say that potentially is jeopardized by the current Trump administration, and that funds all of our outreach and training to help people access these programs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So great programs. Do they monitor how much they give out, obviously? And then how much waste do we get from like 3 Squares? I've seen where, people haven't come and there's so much extra food. Does that get redistributed to the homeless, or what happens to what doesn't get used?
Right. Well, there's zero waste in 3 Squares Vermont, because that program is people get benefits based on their household size and their income and all kinds of other criteria on an electronic benefits card. And they use that card at grocery stores and
That's good.
And they are able to, with dignity, select the food that their family needs and wants, and they're able to purchase that food at the register. So 3 Squares Vermont is one of the most efficient, powerful programs, not just for creating food security, but for alleviating poverty in our country. It's, I think, just third up there after, Social Security and the earned income tax credit.
Summer meals.
Summer meals or school meals. Yeah. So the programs work really hard to minimize waste dramatically. And in Vermont, we've had a lot of really innovative solutions to that. For example, shifting to Vermont organic bulk milk in dispensers so that kids dispense their own milk. They're not just handed a carton of milk that, they may or may not drink, for example, right? Using local food and scratch cooking, many of the things that the expansion of our meal programs through the Universal School Meals Act have made possible have really made a big difference in addressing waste. And of course, all schools, like every place else, are required to compost their food. Many of them have school gardens. But financially speaking, these programs operate at a very lean level. And so there's many tricks and techniques that the people who run our school meal programs have developed to repurpose food into a different recipe for the next day. For example, if it's not all used on the serving line and things
But
like
is
that.
that something they track, like the summer ones, when they, when you see them sitting out in front of the school? Are they tracking, like we brought 50 meals, only gave out 20?
Oh, yes, absolutely, because they're reporting that every day. They're reporting the numbers that they expect to serve every day to whoever is providing those meals to them, whether they're making those meals on site or they're having them satellited from a school cafeteria that's making meals for multiple sites. They're in communication every single day reporting, this is how many kids showed up, this is how many we're expecting tomorrow, so that they can, adjust. So if they had 30 more meals than they served, like that would be a huge red flag. Yeah.
I'm sure at the start of the program that must have happened. Now it's more streamlined.
Yes, I mean, every day that the program operates, they are more able to refine their numbers, but they also have, often refrigerators on site where they can save that, that food. I mean, there's a really strong effort not to waste the good food that we're bringing into these programs.
Thank you. I hope you don't feel I was being too hard.
No,
I'm
I
just
think
very
this is a really important question to ask. I mean, everybody who works in these programs really cares about actually getting food to the people and the kids who need the food. So it's a perfectly valid question to ask.
Thank you.
Okay. Again, I think you've already had some conversation about the Vermont Food Security Roadmap in this committee this session. Hunger Free Vermont is one of the founding members of that coalition. We helped to collect the community input and write that roadmap. And we have committed that 100% of our programs and projects and work aligns with the strategies and priority objectives in that roadmap. And again, the food security roadmap is focused on communities, farms, and government, that if those three entities work together collaboratively, we truly can create a food secure future for everybody in Vermont. And we're already on the road, and in recent years, this legislative body and this committee has lended a lot of support to that, have really helped put us on the road. In fact, without your leadership, we wouldn't have a chance of creating food security for everybody in our state. So the Crop Cash and Farm Share programs, those allow people who are enrolled in Three Squares Vermont to use their Three Squares Vermont benefits at farmers markets and double the amount of money that they have to purchase Vermont farm products at those farmers markets when they use their Three Squares Vermont benefits. So this is, just huge, hugely important for creating food security. Dr. Meredith Niles and her research team at the University of Vermont have been studying food hunger in Vermont since the pandemic. And her most recent study showed that on average, people estimate that they are $288 a month short of what they need to actually be food secure in our state. Now, that sounds like a small amount of money, but for people who are living on the edge, that is an insurmountable gap. And if you think about someone who's going to spend $10 of their Three Squares Vermont benefits at their local farmers market, and they get 10 additional dollars to spend, that knocks that gap down for them, and it's really critically important. The Vermont Food Bank and its network of food shelves and meal sites. I know you've had testimony from our close partners at the Vermont Food Bank already. And unfortunately, Three Squares Vermont Benefits and the other programs, while they are the critical bedrock foundation for helping people be food secure, those benefits are a supplement. They are insufficient to cover the true cost of food for people. And so we need the charitable food system in support, and certainly in times of emergency, we need that system to be ready and able to distribute food. And so I know you've got some requests for funding before you this session, and we strongly support those. Meals on Wheels, the legislature has provided some state-based funding to supplement that program, where federal reimbursement rates are also insufficient, and more people depend on that. That may be their only nutritious meals that they receive, is through that delivery program for people who can't get out and shop and prepare meals for themselves. The Land Access and Opportunity Board and Universal School Meals. This is a program that has proven itself over and over again, costing 40% less than what it was projected to cost, serving 2.5 million more meals to students, and allowing for hundreds, literally, of communities in Vermont to gain new eligibility for free summer meal programs and after-school meal programs, allowing us to break all of our records and serve over 1 million summer meals to students last summer, and bringing in, between summer meals and expanded school meals, $10 million at least in additional federal funding for schools to buy food and serve students. We are deeply disappointed, I have to stop and mention, that the governor proposes to repeal this incredibly valuable program, and I'll just stop there for now. Farm to School and Early Childhood Grants and the Local Food Purchasing Incentive, which I will note will lose a lot of its power if we also lose the Universal School Meals program, but that is allowing schools to purchase more local food than ever before. And the Recovery for Flooded Farms and Businesses, of course, that the legislature has supported, and returning Vermont 211, which is our 24-hour live person on the phone, toll-free from anywhere in Vermont. You can call and ask for help with anything, any program, and get connected to what you need to apply or to get help or to get emergency shelter. That is a lifeline for all the work that so many direct service organizations and so many state programs provide. And this legislature funded a return to 24/7 service last session, and we're strongly supportive of that. And including critical food security language and in emergency planning and response in the act passed last year was also important. The word food didn't appear in Vermont's Emergency Planning and Response Act until last year, so that doesn't help anybody. All right. And I think you've heard this also. More Vermonters are facing hunger now than in the last 5 years, since COVID support programs have ended and inflation and food costs continue to put healthy food out of reach for so many. All right, and Three Squares Vermont. So Three Squares Vermont is the largest, most effective and dignified anti-hunger program for food security at home for families. 13 million in federal dollars flow through this program every single month in our state, going directly to food businesses, food retailers, large and small, and Vermont farms. 19,000 children in Vermont are enrolled, 17,000 people over age 60, 65,000 people in total in 39,000 households. So this is a huge program for our state. This just gives you some information that you can take a look at after also, but these are some of the average benefit amounts here in Vermont. And the table on the side is the national maximum benefit amounts for different household sizes. But here in Vermont, for a household with children, the average benefit for a month of food is $559, which is not very much, but vitally important. And just so you have a sense of who are we talking about here, we are talking about people at the lowest income levels in our state. A family of 4 would have to make less than $57,720 a year in order to be eligible for this program, or I will add, for free or reduced price school meals under the old model that we eliminated with universal school meals. So that is about half the amount of money that our own joint fiscal office estimates is the absolute minimum income for a family of 4 in Vermont to meet all of their basic needs. So we also, of course, have a gap, you can see, between the people who are eligible for this critical food security program, 3 Squares Vermont, and everybody who is at risk of hunger in our state right now, right? But even so, out of all of the people who are income eligible or likely to be eligible for 3 Squares Vermont, only about 40% are participating in the program. And that is because there are a lot of challenges with the application. You can see that the benefit amounts are low, and for some people they're much lower than that. This is just the average. And so what we think is that we could really reach many more people with this federally funded program if we created more flexible ways for key vulnerable groups of people to use the program. And one way we can do that is for the state of Vermont to opt into the SNAP Restaurant Meals Program, RMP. So this is an option that exists already in federal law, and 8 states have already exercised it. And it's a program that is specifically for households where everybody in the household qualifies for 3 Squares Vermont with their income and is over age 60 or is unhoused or has disabilities. And it allows people in those groups to use their 3 Squares Vermont benefits to purchase a prepared meal at a restaurant or food truck. And this is really important for these groups of people, right? We have a crisis of housing and thus of unhoused people right now in our state, 3,300 people or so. And these folks don't have any place to store or prepare their food, right? They don't have any place to cook. So for them to be able, they may have 3 Squares Vermont benefits, but they may not be able to actually use them. And this is an option for that. People over age 60, people with disabilities are other people who have difficulty shopping and preparing food for themselves at home. And they also are people who are part of the scourge of incredible social isolation that leads to mental health challenges and physical health challenges. So we could really make use of our restaurants. Yes.
Thank you. Can they use that at fast foods?
They can use that at any restaurant that is accepted into the program. But the great thing about this program is that our states are allowed to set criteria for the program. And so there is a bill that will be introduced soon, this session, and states are allowed to prioritize geographic areas for restaurants to come in, any other criteria that they want to place on restaurants. Now, we think that sometimes, you know, a fast food restaurant is what's within walking distance of where someone's living and they need to eat, and that is okay. So we certainly don't advocate for excluding any restaurant that wants to participate and meets the eligibility criteria and fulfills their responsibilities. At the same time, this bill would prioritize, restaurants that are located in small rural towns where there aren't a lot of options. There might not even be a place to buy groceries in the town at all. It prioritizes places where these higher numbers of these populations live, and it prioritizes restaurants that work to make use of local food. We are confident, and we know that many locally owned Vermont restaurants are really excited about the opportunity to contribute to their communities by participating in this program. And this gives you a sense of the number of people we're talking about. It's a pretty significant number of some of our most vulnerable folks in our state who might be eligible to participate in the Restaurant Meals Program. 13,000 people just between the ages of 60 and 65, and that number is going to grow every year in our state. 42,000 people with disabilities and 3,300 people currently unhoused. This is just another way of answering your question, Senator Heffernan. Many different kinds of restaurants could participate in this program. And we want to make sure that locally owned Vermont restaurants can participate in the program. And to do that, what other states have learned is that they need support. They need help to navigate the application process with USDA, and they need some financial support to deal with their startup costs. Like maybe they need to reprogram their point of sale system so it can accept electronic benefit transfer cards, for example, so they can accept Three Squares Vermont benefits. So the bill includes a navigator position to provide technical assistance to restaurants to help them enroll so that they can actually do it, and some funding to support the startup costs for restaurants to be able to participate. And this also will help level the playing field between national chains and local Vermont restaurants that don't have the same resources.
Yes, thank you. So, Honora, what sort of funding are you anticipating in terms of dollars, and was it included in the governor's recommend?
It's not included in the governor's recommended budget. There will be a bill introduced. It would be $100,000 for the navigator position at the Department for Children and Families Economic Services Division, which is where Three Squares Vermont is administered, and a fund of $75,000 to support the startup costs for restaurants. And the benefits are all federal funding.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you so very much for your time today and for all of your efforts on behalf of all of us here in Vermont. And of course, if you have any further questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Historically, what have you received from this committee as far as funding?
What does Hunger Free Vermont receive?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Okay.
Hunger Free Vermont, we advocate for state government to support the programs that make a difference for people and to innovate those programs to remove stigma, to expand access, and that's what we are here asking of you today as well. Hunger Free Vermont receives from state funding a bit of money. Oh, actually, maybe it wasn't accurate for me to say zero, because we do receive some funding through the Farm to School and Early Childhood Grants Program to provide technical assistance to grantees in how to strengthen their meal programs to best take advantage of farm to school opportunities if they're funded by the grant program. So that would be $10,000 a year about that we receive to have our staff provide that technical assistance through that grant program.
Back to the slide of food access priority where you say Fund Vermont Food Bank request for $1.75 million. Is that in the governor's request, or is that how does that brand new committee, understanding how the
Yes.
money flows. So it's important for us to understand as far as that. So when we see monies in here that, where you're saying fund Vermont Food Banks request for 1.75 million in base funding to support responsive readiness and 3.25 million for food purchases and distributions, and then another 500,000 in base funding, that comes from where? Or who's requesting that?
Well, the Vermont Food Security Roadmap Coalition, so all the organizations in that coalition are making that request collectively. I have not had the opportunity to fully review everything in the governor's fiscal year 2026 funding proposal, so I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this committee also, as you probably well know, did support universal school meals, and we, I believe, under Senator Starr's leadership, sent a request to Senator Probst to fund that and to expand it from just breakfast to lunch and breakfast. And you mentioned earlier that in the governor's address yesterday, that was repealed, but I don't have a good sense of whether it was just taking the lunch away and leaving what was in place before that, the breakfasts, or whether it was both, and whether there were guidelines that if you, in other words, based on family income, you could do this, or you couldn't do that kind of thing. And that was a big sticking point, I think, for a lot of people last year, that if a family made a certain amount of money and in most people's perception could afford to pay for the meal, that they would not be able to participate. In the end, we didn't make that a requirement. We just said, no, everybody can eat. So do you know exactly what was repealed or suggested to be repealed?
The entirety of the Universal School Meals Act is repealed.
Oh,
In the proposal, so the governor did not mention that the Universal School Meals Program in his address, but in the proposed budget that was presented, the entirety of the act is repealed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Committee, anything else? Well, thank you very much. That's always good to see you.
It's very good to see all of you, and please, if you ever have any questions about food security matters, or how to support any of your constituents in accessing any of these programs, Hunger Free Vermont is always at your service. And we are grateful for your time today.
thanks, Amanda.
Thank you for
Thank you
what
very
you
much.
do. Committee, we are going to talk with you. Extension yet? Heather Darby, is she going to be here?
She's got stuck in traffic
Okay.
and is hoping to be here, but she said she might be a few minutes late.
Okay, well, why don't we just take our break right now?
Okay.
And we'll take a 15-minute break. And